Global Inclusion Project #GIVIB 2020. Interview with Dominique Moody. Let's start off by having you tell us about your visual impairment.
They diagnosed me having a condition that's similar to what we now see in mostly seniors of macular degeneration. But because I was in my late 20s, it was considered the juvenile form of macular degeneration. And they called it macular dystrophy at the time, or its common name, Stargardt's. And I had never heard of that. I didn't know what it was. And when they finally came up with that diagnosis, then they told me how it defined me. And they said, you do understand that you now have a condition that is a blindness. And even using any remote part of that word was shocking, because to me, I could still see things. And I could not embrace this idea. Blindness to me meant you could not see anything. And I didn't understand the diversity and the spectrum of what it meant to see.
Dominique tells us more about who she is and where she's from.
I think of myself as a tall person. I am only 5'7", but I've been this height since the age of 9. So I carry myself and in my family of tall people as a tall statured person. And so there is that. I also, as a African descent woman, and I have only recently switched from using the term African American exclusively, because I think it doesn't truly encompass all of who I am. My experience is broader than this country. And so I felt, to include that by saying I am of the diaspora. And I am a mix of those diaspora experiences. I was born outside of the country, in Augsburg, Germany, in the mid-50s, of a military-based family. And so that alone sits me both outside, of which both parents were from here, and both were African American. So I was seated elsewhere in a whole different country, but my cultural and social perspectives and lens is one of my parents. And I think that's an important thing. We have whole generations of people who may have been born outside of the countries of their parents' origin and are connected as citizens to those places, but are seated elsewhere. And there isn't much spoken about that at all.
How was it becoming a visual artist with a visual impairment?
Not everyone embraced this idea. So I had to fight for it, and fight really hard sometimes to convince people to say, you cannot define me, and suggest that I can't make it through this school. I think because I was older, though, if I had been 15, 16, 17, 18, I don't know that I would have done it. My age prepared me to say, I might actually be older than the professor and the counselor. And so I am going to bolster my own support and say, no, you can't define me that way.
Dominique speaks about navigating and using a cane.
My sister, who was one of my greatest allies, and we worked together, we shared an apartment together. So she became, for a while, my second set of eyes that were a lot clearer than mine, even with her glasses. And so, despite using, you know, her as a kind of guide, I also ended up bouncing off ideas, and she would we would do a lot of things together. So just walking down the street and navigating my way down the street, I would see people, and all of a sudden realize I don't see full people anymore. I only see half a person. I can't recognize people's faces, even of people I know. Um, and so she would give me a heads up. And, we're young, and we're young women. And she would say, at 2 o'clock, there is a fine young man coming your way. Look open, smile. And he's giving you the big eye. So smile even broader now, you know. And so it taught me how to start using my senses in a way I had never done before, because I didn't have to rely on them. But when I started going and navigating my way solo, like going to the campus and getting to the different classes, and even be able to, I had 5 minutes to get clear across the campus. So I ended up getting a cane from Lighthouse for the Blind, a portable one that was, it kind of slips into itself. And so it could kind of disappear when I don't need it. And it didn't have a red tip, and I didn't understand why it didn't have a red tip. And then I had to learn that the different colors signify certain types of things, how to use it. And it wasn't for feeling my way. It was for identifying my condition to others. And so I started becoming more at ease with having one when I needed. But I did find that I had to struggle through some setbacks with it, because when I traveled at night, it at times coming from the campus became a target. And so as a woman, I had to really adjust myself to how I carry myself with enough confidence that I'm also going to be self-protective. I had to find out times when it was useful, when I traveled in particular, because it would let others know that there was a condition, and that I did not see fully. But then I also had to realize that there are elements of vulnerability associated with someone who is seen by the larger public as having that vulnerability, and there are some who might take advantage of that. But I needed to have the independence to come and go on the campus, and I even had my own studio there at the campus, so I stayed there for quite a long stretch in the day. And at one point, I remember overhearing a conversation behind me. And this is one of those things, too, of you don't necessarily think that people with various disabilities or impairments all of a sudden kind of magically get this kind of super human kind of aspects of hearing. I think it's because you use it. We actually don't use all of our senses to their full capacity, even just as human beings. And so when you lose the strength in one, you have to use some of the others. And by using them, you develop them more, and you're more reliant on them. And so I was aware of my surrounding more than I ever had to be. And so I could pick up conversations that were behind me. or off to the side so that I could orient where I was, especially at night, where my vision was even less. And so I heard the conversations of a small group of young men who made the presumption that if I had limits at seeing, that for some reason I may have had limits at hearing. And so they were making remarks that made me alert. And so I could very quickly tap my cane and it would telescope and shorten. And I had learned some basic self-defense moves and a stance. And I quickly then turned around, faced them, had my, what they thought was a bar in my hand rather than a cane. And I said, "Hello, can I help you guys with anything? I thought you were talking to me." And that's all I said. They stopped in their tracks, stunned, and didn't know even how to answer. But what they absolutely did realize is that there was no even possibility that they were going to proceed with any kind of action.
Thank you for watching, and a big thank you to Dominique Moody, The Nomad, Side Street Projects, David Martinez, and Kari Scott. For more information on the Global Inclusion Project, you can visit our website at globalinclusionproject.org, and on Instagram, follow us at Global Inclusion Project. Below, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you again.